Chris, is a major milestone for Tom, of course. What were you most impressed for him to not only get to this stage of his career playing this many games, but your memories of him and what do you cherish most about the last sort of decade with him?
It feels like we're speaking about this sort of stuff a lot, and we should avoid playing down the milestone, but we also don't want to celebrate the game before the equal and the surpassing of the record. But I'll talk about him briefly because I enjoy talking about him. He's, what is it? Is it 355 or 356 games? 56. The thing that comes to mind is this: if you had to choose players early in their career that were going to have longevity, Tom wouldn't have been on the list. The game was changing. The big, strong key forward, was seen to be, almost a relic of the past. With the way the rules were going, with the way modern defensive systems worked, and Tom was just able to buck that trend through his whole career and adapt. So that would be the thing: the way he's adapted to the game and the way we've played has been admirable. And we're in a bit of a period of adaptation now as well, and I'm still really confident that he'll play a big part in that, which is rare that you're talking about a 35-year-old playing his 356 games to still be central to the changes we're trying to make with the way we play.
So the 350, 355, 356 now, is this arguably the most significant of the lot, considering surpassing Joel Selwood?
I don't know. I'm trying to think how he would think about it. I suspect that he's a little bit happier being right next to Joel. I think he'd feel a little bit uncomfortable passing his great mate, and I'm sure that he wouldn't even think about it in those terms. But it's a significant moment in Geelong's history. Over 150 years, like, this is the guy that's played the most games in our history. So I pinch myself that I've had the chance to be a part of that journey, and I think all of our players feel the same way, from the most experienced all the way down to our first-year players. Like, what a privilege to get to share a little bit of that, because it'll be talked about for hundreds of years into the future, I suspect.
I spoke to Susie and I said, are there any grandstands left to name after him? If there's any left, what would you name after him? Is there anything left here that's unnamed?
Not much. No, but we're still, we're up to stage 5C in our 10-stage plan for Cardinia Park, so maybe we'll find something else in the future.
Jeremy Cameron, right to go?
Yeah, he's good. Yeah, so had a really good week on the track, and I'm not privy, and deliberately so, around the concussion protocols and all the benchmarks. I just get the end result, and that was made clear a number of days ago. So we're excited to have him back.
Duncan and DeConning as well, both okay, and that's 4 big inclusions, isn't it? So.
Yeah, but we think that we have a team that will be sort of fresh. Even the guys that played up in Darwin are coming off a longer break. We feel that we needed a good week on the track because we haven't been playing as well as we would like, and we've had that. Doesn't guarantee anything, but it gives you a chance.
What have been the big focuses over that, extended break, I guess, after having a few losses in the last few weeks?
Yeah, we thought for one reason or another that our system has been a little disjointed, and even going back as far as the Carlton game, which we were good enough to win and for the most part played pretty well, but there were some things that sort of weren't as sharp as they could have been, just in terms of our structure and our system. And look, we think in some respects that the lack of cohesion we've had has been a bit self-inflicted. So we've talked about that in detail and had a good week on the track to try to sharpen those things up. So, there's no point lamenting some of the errors we've made in the last month or so. It's more about sort of making sure, one, we don't make them again, but two, we continue the evolution of our game, because whether we were 7-0 or whether we were 4-3, we were always really confident that we needed to improve. We didn't feel, even when we were undefeated that we were playing perfect footy by any stretch. So that's a little bit more obvious to most people now, but it was obvious to us before we lost the last three.
Is having the three key forwards, Neil, Hawkins and Cameron, aimed at helping that cohesion?
Yeah, to an extent, but as I've said quite a few times this year already, we were keen to play the three of them at some stage. And we feel like we have some weapons in the forward half, and Shannon's we're really confident he's going to be a good player for us, but we can't prioritise sort of any individual over the cohesion of our forward line, and that's one of the things we've worked on this week. And we think that the guys we've picked down there, give us the best chance to maximise our opportunities. And as I think I said previously, he only really got his opportunity in round 5 against North Melbourne and played more than well enough to hold his spot. It just kind of didn't work out that way in terms of the players we had coming back. So it's taken till round 11 for us to get to this point, but we're happy we're here.
Guthrie and Rowan obviously missing. How long do you expect them to be out there?
We expect that they're both short-term issues. Gary was just a really acute adductor issue that was probably touch and go, but discretion was a better part of valour there. And Cam Guthrie just has an Achilles issue that's flared up a little bit that medical staff are really keen to get on top of, but they think that it'll be short-term. Although having said that, he does need some continuity in terms of his training and playing. So while we're pretty confident he'll get back, we just need to be thoughtful about his reintegration because we don't want him missing too much training. And if games get in the way of that, then we'll hold him back.
Patrick, I think I saw him this morning, he's looking like he's on the mend. I think the timeline on him was 1 to 3 weeks. So you've got Richmond and Sydney coming up. Is there any, I know your consistent approach, I don't think you'd want to rush him for the Sydney game, or would you?
Well, yeah, big difference between 1 and 3 weeks, isn't there? But it's probably the most honest guess at where it's going to land because if you watched him train, and I know you would have seen a little bit of him out there today, he looks pretty sharp and he's put and will have put together a good couple of weeks of training before we even consider him. But it's likely we'll sort of hold him back a little bit. But, I watched him train a little bit today, but probably more so 2 days ago, and he looked ready to play now. But that's, as you know, just not a path we're going down. But, yeah, it's not out of the realms of possibility that there's just no reason not to play him, say, next week, for example, but I suspect we'll hold him back.
Does the bye coming up after the Sydney game, does that change your sort of, like how you want to handle or sort of manage him coming back? Maybe thinking of maybe giving him the extra week off, or would you rather get him back for the Sydney game? What would you prefer?
No, I'd prefer that he played the Sydney game, but I'd prefer he played this week as well. So that's why the head coach should be a little separated from this decision making, because if that's the question, it's like, yeah, if he's right to go, let's play him. But the bye is something we obviously consider, but it's not a defining factor. Like he just needs to be. We need to be absolutely certain that he's ready to go, and then I'm tipping when we're absolutely certain we'll just wait another week. But we're not going to wait 6. There's some point where you've just got to play him. But again, it's easier for us to talk about this because we've got a history with it and a successful one as well. So the model we've used with him in the past that's worked is likely one we'll go with again.
Parton O'Connor admitted. What was the reasoning behind those 2 moves?
I don't talk about those things publicly. That's a private conversation. But what I will say is it's a little hard on those guys, which speaks to our midfield depth. In particular, we have made a call this week that we think is right for the team, but it doesn't reflect necessarily even what we think is our best 22 into the future. We find that hard to predict. We just think for this week we've picked the right team. But again, I just don't. It's not the way I want to operate. The private conversations that we have with players, we don't air. We just don't air those private conversations publicly. I don't think that's good policy, and it's not fair on the individuals.
How do you tighten up defensively this week?
Well, yeah, it's an interesting question. I guess the focus would primarily be on last week, which over the course of a long period of time is an outlier, giving up that many scores. But I mean, the simple answer is if you give up that many entries, you're going to be under pressure. And again, even going way back as far as the Carlton game, that we were good enough to win, we were still minus 20 odd inside 50s, and that's just not a sustainable way of playing the game in general, but in particular the way we want to play. So I think if you had to prioritise, the most important thing defensively for us is how we go around the contest, and that's not just stoppages, but sort of how we defend our turnovers. So I think primarily it's more up the ground rather than it is sort of D50 defence.
What have you made of GWS and their form across the whole season, I guess?
Oh, I love them as a team, really. From the individuals and the stars they have through to the way they've been playing. It's really only the last 3 weeks where I think observers might have sort of taken a step back and thought, oh, okay, maybe they're not the best team in the comp right at the moment, but they've been pretty consistent over a 12-month period. But I think that they're probably reflective of most of the competition. You just look at it and you think there's virtually not a team out there where you think if they get the game on their terms, they get what they want, their good players play well, that they wouldn't win. But the reverse is also true because it's so even. If you're a little bit off, it's not a disaster to lose 3 in a row. Let me rephrase that. It's not out of the realms of possibility that a good team would lose 3 in a row. And I am biased, but I regard us as a good team, and they've clearly been a good team over a 12-month period. So rather than sort of analysing their form necessarily, it's just I think they've been beaten by a few pretty good teams, but their best is still as good as anyone's.
They've got a good record down here recently as well, 3 wins in a row. What do you put that down to?
Luck. I'm joking. I'm not those sort of stats are theatre in my opinion, and quirks. The last one's probably relevant. That's close enough. But when was the first one of those 3?
I think
2019. So again, without being a smart aleck, it's kind of like we tend not to look at games from 2019 and inform the way we think about this one.
Yeah. I was going to say, if they do, hopefully not for you, but if they do win tomorrow night, can we talk about maybe it's not luck next week?
Now you're taking what was a joke and trying to make it sound like it was serious. So let me preface what I'm about to say by making that clear. No, it's what you should do. That's what I mean by the theatre. That's the difference between what you do in the media and what we do. Like that would be an interesting quirk. 4 in a row down here, not many teams have done that. But I don't think you could extrapolate that out to say they have devised a system in 2019 that's still working in 2024. I think the more charitable, the more accurate explanation would be they've been a good team for a decent period of time. They had a little bit of a lull there, but so did Collingwood for 1 year. That if you look at it, sort of their performance over a sort of 5 or 6 year period, it's been pretty solid.
Midfield has been a bit of an issue at times this season. How do you look to combat the Giants and Tom Green, one of the most informed midfielders in the comp?
Yeah, and I feel like I say this every week. It's not just him. They've got some really good experience in there. And when you think about their midfield, you probably should include their high forwards and their high backs as well. Like Whitfield's a star in his position. They have some really good experience with Cornelio and Ward and some really high-end young talent as well. So the challenges keep coming for our midfield. And the thing that excites us is that we're not going into these games thinking, right, it has to be Guthrie and Dangerfield that get us through. It's almost a silver lining that we don't have those guys, so others get the opportunity to stand up. But it's going to be a real challenge because there's not an easy answer to how you counter it. We've just got to, I guess if anything, we'd just be a little bit more focused on trying to get our stuff right, which, as I alluded to earlier, over the last month, we don't think that we've got. So, yeah, a bit more work in the longer break around sort of our structure and our consistency, which is broken down, is probably the main answer.
Will Giants like get an opportunity in the 22 tomorrow?
Yep. I don't normally answer that question, but you got me.
I was going to ask, just following from before, has there been a challenge like 7-0 and everyone in the media is talking great things, and then now you know how fast the media come and attack the team after being 0-3. Has it been challenging for the team dealing with that at all, or do you think like the team's handled the challenge of being 0-3 down and all the articles being written and all this kind of stuff during the week?
Well, I mean, I hope it doesn't sound disrespectful, but I've just never really concerned myself with what's being written, and only because we've got to focus on what we do, and we're obviously privy to a lot more information as well. So it's generally pretty good policy in my mind not to be too aware of it in the first place. But even when you become aware of it, it's never as good as you think, and it's never as bad as you think most of the time. So yeah, again, I've probably said a little bit more than I usually do. Like we were 7-0, we beat Carlton, and we were aware that we had some issues that were less than perfect. And again, that's the way we try to think about it, not be beholden to the win-loss. Like sometimes we're more critical of ourselves after a close win than we are after a close loss. So, but the part that I think is really relevant in your question is I can think a certain way, but that doesn't matter if the players or the wider group, have a different view. And we have a lot of guys that are much more aware of what's being written and said in the media than me. I would say most of our guys know more than I do in that respect. So we are conscious of making sure that we focus in on what we think is important. And there's a chance, we're not saying that the outsiders are wrong. It's likely that we agree with them on most of the issues that they're seeing. What we have control over is rectifying those things and being clear on what we think we do well. And even those things, like we don't go to any great lengths to explain those things publicly, but we're really clear internally. And as I said, for about a month, those things have been off and we're keen to get them back.